We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. This is Cheryl from Jajawarong country.
Welcome to episode 80 of the Beyond 90 pod. It has been an unbelievably large week in Australian women's football, and here to discuss that with me is Brisbane Roar superfan Magella Card. So how are you going, Madge?
Yeah, really good. Some good results at the Asian Cup, keeping me happy. With my team, my Brisbane team being postponed their game due to COVID. So at least there's still plenty of football around to keep us entertained.
Yes. So for those of you who follow me on Twitter, I mean, you know, it's been a big week for my brand. It just got even bigger. So something came in the mail today. There we go.
Oh, wonderful.
There's my first Melbourne City jersey, and that's not it, because there was two of them. I got one just like it with a different surname on it. So there we go. Of course, this will be lost on people who only listening to the pod later and can't see the audio. But yes, I do have customized Melbourne City jerseys now with Tumutha and Malone on the back, because which was pretty much inevitable. There's one more jersey coming. I think we all know what it's going to be, but we'll have to wait and see. So now, because it's episode number 80, well, as you know, we'd like to honor the Matilda with the same cap number as its episode number. By the way, I've just realized I haven't introduced myself. So if you don't know, I'm Eric Subihano, who I do a fair bit with Beyond. And if the voice sounds familiar, that's probably because you listen to NPL TV in New South Wales. But anyway, now that little admin's out of the way, cap number 80 is Bridgette Starr, and Cheryl has lovingly left some notes for us. She couldn't be here today, but Starr was a defender who made her Matildas debut in 1994, playing 53 A internationals, scoring 1 goal in them, and 6 non-A internationals. Starr was the first indigenous footballer to represent Australia at a World Cup, which was in 1999, and also the first indigenous footballer to represent Australia at an Olympic Games, the Sydney ones in 2000. She's a member of the Aboriginal and Islander Sports Hall of Fame. Now, former Matildas team manager, Beyond 90 co-founder and expert friend of the pod, Sarah Groube, had this to say about Starr. Legend. Bridgette was one of the many strong left-footers of that era, playing mainly in the backline and strongly pushing up the field. As a Novocastrian, she had a strong playing relationship with Cheryl Salisbury. Bridgette went on to play AFL, where she was outstanding with ACT and selected to a number of all-star teams. She's now an extraordinarily fit CrossFitter. Is there any other type of CrossFitter? Her mum, Wendy, was one of the many brilliant Matilda mums who set a strong legacy of parental support, which continues today, traveling to tournaments where she could. Bridgette was one of our first Indigenous athletes. So yes, so that fact certainly we're one of this country's great servants when it comes to football. Now, I suppose on to the Asian Cup. We've actually got a lot to go on. So I think 2 full rounds of games since our last pod match. But I think the first thing we have to cover is terrible, unprecedented news that India are out of the Asian Cup.
Yeah, I mean, it's really awful. The COVID outbreak affecting 13 players. Oh, no, that's...
I believe, 13 was the minimum that the players to be able to field the team as per AFC competition regs, which they couldn't reach. So, I think it made the double digits, the number of players that actually tested positive, meaning that they couldn't make that minimum of 13, which is, I mean, it's just heartbreaking. I mean, imagine there you are looking forward to, hosting a Women's Asian Cup. No doubt a tournament that those players and football in India would have been looking forward to having as a legacy tournament, like we are for the Women's World Cup here in Australia and New Zealand, and to have it, have their chance to perform on home soil, and that was their debut as well, wasn't it? Believe so.
Yeah, so just a really heartbreaking way to go out, and it's just, you do wonder where the foresight of the AFC was, given that we are in sort of unprecedented times at the moment. I understand why there are rules around squads and tournaments and not wanting to allow sort of last minute switches of players, but it's pretty unfortunate, and and there's really big knock-on effects to World Cup qualification.
Yes.
Eric, I think you might probably tend to be the bigger expert on that, but I think it's the other group games as well.
The other group games. So basically, and if this sounds confusing when I explain this to you, listeners, don't worry, it's confusing to me as well. Now with India's Group A down to 3 teams, this means that to keep it fair, when they decide the 2 best third place teams to go through to the quarterfinals, their games, these third place teams, any games against the 4th place teams in Group B and C don't count. Yes, I'm already confused myself with this. It's completely
but they still count for the teams that are 1 and 2. So it counts.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But
So basically,
place it doesn't.
Now that's right. So now you're judged on only your results against the teams playing in 1st and 2nd. Then there's World Cup ramifications. That's one less team, of course, that can battle for one of those 5 automatic spots alongside Australia, or the 2 playoff spots that the AFC will also get. It's really hard because in tournaments are, of course, held in a condensed time frame, and AFC tournaments even more so. They're notorious for having 2 days of rest between games for teams, or even 1 day of rest if you happen to be a junior Matilda. So it's hard to say. And I think more to the kind of the point you alluded to a bit earlier, Madge, AFC, from what I've heard, not exactly known for their flexibility, but I think this, hopefully at the very least, this may serve as a lesson to other confederations, and maybe they're proactive and start thinking, at least planning for this happening in their own continental tournaments, because as we know, the Euros are later this year, and who's to say that this couldn't happen to a European nation? Absolutely.
Okay, so really horrible all around, and with those the 3rd place teams, if you've got a feel for Vietnam now in a really tough group, they're going to find it hard, I think, to get out. So.
Yeah, so it's really, I think the way they,
Vietnam, of course,
get out,
Japan and South Korea.
Myanmar, so they've got it's a good point. So what happens with goal difference in the other 3rd place teams? Yes, well, this is confusing at the best of times. So
I don't do well with round robin and groups, even when it's like nothing's no spanners are thrown in the works. So
yes. Okay, but on to happy news. 2 big Matildas games, and the first one, which feels so long ago but was actually only on Friday, Australia 18, Indonesia 0. Many people had many thoughts about this, including a couple of our usual co-hosts who couldn't be here, Cheryl and Stefan. But what were your takeaways from the game against Indonesia?
Oh, look, I mean, no anger from me. No crankiness. I was really surprised how much crankiness there was after the first game.
Yes.
It's probably my main takeaway. But I thought, it was fun. I thought you did what you wanted to do in a first match of a tournament, rack up some goals against a team that you should be better than. I was really happy that they didn't go over the top in their celebrations. So they enjoyed their ones, like Ivy Lewick getting her first Matildas goal, sort of being really happy about that. That's great to see. But I think Stefan had some more technical thoughts, and maybe we can chat about the subs issue. I'll say, when I was watching the game, I was like, at halftime, maybe I'm disappointed we didn't bring on any of the younger players, or not many of the younger players, but you hear arguments after the fact, and so wanting to get minutes into the legs of some players that you might need in more crunch games later in the tournament, and making sure that all of your players that you're wanting to have in your tougher games are match fit and firing when you need them to. So plenty of arguments back and forth, but happy with the results. So not too much crankiness from me.
Yes. So as we'll cover, I switched to Thailand, Philippines straight after that, and I didn't actually watch the post game. And then I was looking on Twitter while Thailand, Philippines was going on, and I was confused as to, and I was wondering why people were so angry. It was a very weird thing for me to experience, and it's kind of the thing I joke about Australian football, that no one can ever be happy about anything for very long. But as you mentioned Stefan's notes, you noted the strong lineup, good intensity, good to see Claire Wheeler as the defensive mids. He feels like the number one keeper slot isn't as certain as it was back in the Olympics when it was Teague and Micah, and we'll have to wait and see. Although, as I mentioned earlier about Asian tournaments, the gaps between games are so short that you're basically even having to rotate the goalkeepers. He did find it interesting that they didn't start with 3 at the back against a team ranked much lower. My counter argument to that is that with the fullbacks bombing on in the back four, it ended up being a back 2 anyway. So it's actually we actually ended up being even more attacking than if it was a back 3. Stefan liked Mary Fowler's combinations with Emily Van Egmond. Love to see it. We wondered about Lana Kennedy playing in the attacking line for a time. I have some very strong feelings about it.
Feelings about that as well.
You go first.
Yeah, well, I thought it was weird. I was like, why's Alana still up there? Mm-hmm. And then, I sat down and thought about it a little bit more. And it's like, well, okay, if we are going to be coming up against teams that are maybe, parking the bus, the usual term, a little bit more. Because it wasn't like you parked her up there for ages. It seemed like a flexible in-game switch to practice a technique or a tactic where we could try throwing Alana up with some height, just to basically, throw a bit of a cat among the pigeons and try something different when you're trying to break down more stubborn defences. So I didn't mind trying out that sort of tactic in game.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to get sent off in the opposition penalty area. So, I mean, that's definitely a positive. I think you're right, though. I'd much rather be doing it when we're 8-0 up against Indonesia than when we're looking for a goal against the Philippines. Like, I kind of got the feeling in the start of the second half of the second game, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a second, that we were like, okay, so we're about to see Kennedy go up front. But, maybe that's why we practice it. But as you say, I'm glad that at least we got the practice.
Yes. My thought of that is, well, my usual thought of this, if this is such a good idea, why don't you just do this all the time? But anyway.
We saw how the reverse went with
are we going to have the defence talk again?
Yeah.
Yes. But also with Lana Kennedy, they speak about the height advantage. I don't believe she has a height advantage against every team in this competition. Pretty sure China have at least 2 defenders taller than her. So I suppose as long as you pick your moments with this kind of thing. But yes, so thanks for joining us, by the way, Dale. Now, do you feel about having a say about the subs against Indonesia like literally everyone else did, apparently?
I had a lot of feelings, and then I listened to the post-match and I was like, well, those people are doctors. I'm just an idiot. I think when Tony came out and explained it, Tony, for all of his foibles, is very eloquent in his explaining of his thinking, which I think is really important, especially in a country where we're not necessarily as technically adept as like other traditional football countries. So we tend to just talk with the feelings instead of with the actual kind of stats. And he has those numbers. That's why they have those sports scientists there. And we've seen in the last kind of probably 5 years, especially in the lead up to the 2019 World Cup, the real kind of a real spike in our use of sports science and kind of like video technology and sports science technology, which I think is really good. Like, I think that it's fine to question him on the topic of how I feel, but once he kind of elucidated us to his opinions, it didn't make much of a difference for me.
Yeah. So, and of course, as we'll get to, I have no credibility when it comes to talking about potential Matilda subs, I think. So I just kept my mouth shut once a certain player didn't come on against Indonesia. But anyway, just going through Stefan's notes, he very much enjoyed Ellie's goals. Yeah, the first one was great. The second one, I think she tried to curl it and it didn't curl and it went in, but they all count. and he was frustrated by the number of offsides late in the game, which there's a few silly ones where they should have been looking at where they were. And I think it's a bigger question about how we feel about a blowout like this in a continental tournament. So I'd like to know your thoughts, Madge or Dale.
I mean, look, I don't dislike them. I think it often depends on the attitude of the team as well. So that's why, like I said up front, I was happy that the Matildas didn't go over the top in their celebrations. Like if you compare to the USA versus Thailand in the 2019 World Cup, where it's like, that
cringe.
Makes you feel a bit off when it's just you're doing really over the top celebrations. So I was really proud of the team and the maturity that they showed to put it in perspective, that you're beating a team well that you should be beating well with the resources that Australia as a country has at its disposal. So, but at the same time, so how are these teams going to get any better? Mm-hmm. My comment was that where I really want to see the improvement and it's maybe been questionable. I want to see improvement in your teams like your Thailand and your Vietnam, who've been sort of those fifth and sixth sort of teams, and your Philippines, like them coming up and being a really strong and organised team. If we start lifting all the teams and they start getting better, and then when they go to their more regional tournaments, that's where your teams like your Indonesia can get better as well. But I see no reason to lock them out from an opportunity to get exposure to higher standard teams.
Yeah.
I agree. I think the bigger question lies in where are all the West Asian teams?
It's a great question. As always.
So like Iran, we covered this a while ago, but very good at futsal. Obviously, there's kind of a cultural difference in terms of, women's rights and things like that. And obviously having the tournament played in Jordan last time gave Jordan a free pass. But there's a big disconnect in terms of West Asia. Now, that's not necessarily for me to comment on because I think it goes a little bit big. It's a bit bigger than football. But in terms of these tournaments, it's not. My take is actually that this win by the Matildas is an anomaly, and I know that like we see weaker teams not performing greatly, but you have to look back at. I was talking to Eric and a few others about this today, but like you have to look back, even with that win against Thailand, Australia is still not the highest goals per game in a group stage by a long shot. Like China and North Korea used to blow teams out like 20-0 and 12-0 in the 90s because they just had so much more in terms of fitness, but also in terms of technique and, resources available to them. I think Madge is exactly right. I think the biggest question for me lies in like, why haven't Vietnam been to a World Cup yet? What happened to Chinese Taipei, considering that Chinese Taipei won 3 tournaments and I'm fairly sure have been to 2 World Cups. Obviously, again,
at least one.
There's a big resources gap there, but like it's the Matildas are. There's that old adage that like you can only beat what's put in front of you. So the real question for me lies in how can we make those teams compete more regularly? How can we get those teams more friendlies? Can we get those teams playing against teams from other continents? It's the same kind of thing with the Thailand thing at the last World Cup. As we said, like these teams shouldn't have to be relying on benefactors. FIFA should be putting more money into women's football. The AFC should be putting more money into women's football, et cetera, et cetera. Even things as simple as like the Asian Women's Champions League, like the club championship. If that could expand, you have more kind of cross-pollination between countries. You have more opportunity for players to get better at a club level, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, as you say, Madge, it's all about a rising tide lifts all boats. We have to make the tide rise. We've got to start throwing rocks in the lake. Yep.
And I think the mention of the sub-federation tournaments like the AFF ones for Southeast Asia, very important because it's a great way for Indonesia to improve against the region standard bearers. As you said, Thailand and Vietnam. And I did think that...
Never forget that Western Australia competed at Asian Cup.
Yes, that's
more power to them seceding is all I'm saying.
Yes, well, I mean, that's probably this is probably not the platform for this, but yeah, get rid of them. Now, but anyway, and I mentioned, I did also think that the Philippines effectively becoming Diaspora FC, which I'm sure we'll get to in a bit.
Oh,
might give
good.
Yeah, might give Thailand and Vietnam a bit of a wake-up call because there's a new kid in town and she has an American accent. But
is Thailand the reverse France? Philippines the reverse France? The Philippines have lots of expats, and France has lots of not expats. Let's say. Just a thought.
Interesting.
Just a thought.
But yes, so and we'll briefly mention the result. Personally, one of the most beautiful results I've ever seen. And also one of the ugliest goals I've ever seen. Thailand 0, Philippines 1. So then, just a great result. But the goal is a thing that happened, I suppose. And it really set up the next game, which was last night, and everyone had many thoughts on pretty much on a lot of things again. So about Australia, Philippines, the coverage itself, the game itself. So who wants to go first?
Up to you, Madge.
You guys can talk in technicalities. I'm more about the feels on this one.
Philippines, very good. Yes. Much better than I thought they would be, and that's no discredit. That's no discredit to them. No disrespect to them. But we knew how they were going to play, and I think that they played for probably 70 minutes. A lot of other teams will be looking at that and worrying. The Philippines, I think, will go through to the next round. They'll probably play China.
No, the draw is second place team in Group A.
China so they'll probably play. So they'll play either Chinese Taipei or Iran.
Yep. Yes.
They're a real chance to get through to the semis.
Yep.
And I think that the World Cup.
They can play. They have enough attacking outlet against a team that will not press them high enough up the pitch. We saw that in the Thailand game. They're really good at compact defending. They can play a set play. They've got two goalkeepers who can distribute the ball really well from what we've seen. Mm-hmm. And they can hold on to a lead. I mean, of course, that Thailand only had to kind of come at them for about 8 or 10 minutes in that first game. I can't see any reason why they don't make it to the World Cup, if I'm being really honest with you.
Yeah,
I think that they can make it.
If they drop it from here, which would be one of the most Filipino things I could think of.
It would be an all-time spilling of the chips. You would be what's his name, Kevin in The Office with the chili. Like, it would not be good. In terms of the game itself, I thought it was a really good game. It was, it was very obvious. We knew what it was going to be. Australia went forward. The Philippines held the tide back. They attacked where they could. Obviously, our defense didn't have a hell of a lot to do, but I was really, really impressed with the Philippines. Impressed with Australia's industry as well, just kind of constantly trying to bomb forward. One thing that I think a lot of people got really frustrated with was the use of Kennedy or Polkinghorne, or the two wingbacks playing diagonal long balls. After the first probably 5 minutes of that happening, I started to realize why they were doing it. Essentially, as soon as Australia's midfield started getting the ball, the Philippines would drop back into a 4-5-1, really. And they'd sit all the way back in the 6 yard, almost all the way back in the 6 yard box, especially at least on their penalty spot. So they were just two banks of five, really. Australia was trying to play over the top to release, whether it was Ford or Fowler down the right-hand side. So I can understand why they were doing it. They had a few opportunities where they could have, if the cross was better, they probably would have scored. But I think that people were kind of blowing their tops over that a little bit too easily. But other than that, decent performance, solid 7s and 8s out of 10s for everybody, really. Great showing by Tegan Micah. Mentioned this off mic, 93% pass completion, 100% saves, clean sheet.
Loved it.
Player of the match.
It's perfect. Can't ask for anything more. So just before I let Madge talk in a bit, I felt like Australia resorted to what I call put it in the mix of football a little bit too much. The combinations were looking good in the first half, and they just needed to be a bit more patient. And work with those. But I mean, they got there in the end, and really that's what counts. But I suppose, Madge, now it's time to hit us with your feels.
Well, I totally agree with that they did look like they maybe panicked a little bit, or even it's like they had just their pass completion. They just weren't hitting some passes that you would normally or would expect them to. But as far as the Philippines are concerned, I was expecting a tough team from them and a physical team. I mean, you play college football in the US, and you're going to get lots of minutes, you're going to get lots of experience, and you're going to have a level of athleticism and skill that's going to do a good job of being able to push players off the ball, and we saw that when they really just frustrated us with. Steph Catley, she put so many great balls into the mixer, and we just couldn't put one away because the Philippines players just got in the way and just really disrupted a lot of those what should have been a few goals in the first half. So, but Eric, I agree. They did look like they got frustrated in that first half. But what I really liked is in the second half, they definitely came out and they looked much calmer. So, which I think is probably a testament to Tony's coaching, which probably brings me to some of the commentary on the game and that. Actually, I might go to Cheryl's notes first because
yes.
Cheryl's made some points about the game, and her point was that Tony G, and this is probably harking back to the first game as well, that Tony should be given some credit for picking the team. He needs to win on the day. So he's got a plan, and he's got the research, and he's in tournament mode. And there's a lot of people who are challenging his decisions. And she makes a point that that's part of the fun of football, and that's where I agree. But it seems like a lot of this challenging of Tony it's not being done in the spirit of the fun of football, and it's not really being done in great faith, I don't think. It's a lot of people just wanting to make controversial statements for the sake of it, and often just bang on about old agendas, which I think we saw in the second half. And many people mentioned this online. It's like it seemed like we heard more about Stadge as a coach than we did hear about Tony or any of the players on the field. It was getting pretty ridiculous. People were talking about, well, if it was a drinking game, you'd be dead every time that Stadge's name was mentioned. And so, I think it's just been a bit disappointing. Some of the commentary going a really sort of, I think, aggressive and negative as opposed to constructive, and actually also even just watching the game. Some of the stuff that was coming out of the commentary from Andy Harper, and it was like, I can't remember, it was someone online was just pointing out all of the different tactics that they were saying the Matildas had to be doing, which didn't make any sense in any sort of cohesive manner. It was just making noise for the sake of it, which then gets the fans riled up, and then just creates a really, I think, negative and toxic environment around supporting the team, which is something I don't enjoy. It's really horrible when after an 18-0 win and a 4-0 win against a team that's, a good team, and Stadge doing a great job organising. That's what we would have absolutely expected from Stadge, to organise a good team. That's hard to break down. And that's exactly what the Philippines came out with, and with players with great skill and athleticism. So to get to the end of games and just have a lot of negativity is really disappointing. Cheryl also makes the point about I guess the team selections as well. Like, she was thrilled with Ivy getting selected and for the stability, but she makes the point that it illustrates that sometimes the choices team choices aren't made to make us personally happy. Everyone has their favourite players. Everyone has their player that they stan. But Tony's the one with most of the information at hand. And I think sometimes we need to not blindly trust. And I think that's where we can question respectfully respecting the coaches, respecting the players. So I don't know. I think I've finished my rant. I'm sure. What do you guys think?
I think that's all fair.
I think Robbie Thompson's done a good job so far, and I've generally liked his commentary when I've heard him, which goes back to almost 10 years ago, because it's kind of been forgotten, but he has been an A-League commentator in the past, like a couple of seasons in the early part of the 2010s. I think it's a reminder that this just doesn't mean that you can switch over and do a good job in women's football if you've been in men's football. Also interesting, he's called both Matildas games after not, to my knowledge, calling a single A-League women's game this season. So
no, that is true. That's a good point.
Yes.
And the commentary was just really stark in comparison to the first game with Amy Chapman as well, who it was just pretty disappointing all round, I thought. But I didn't listen to the post match, so I heard that was quite good this time. So
it is, as you say, it's just, it's okay to question the coach, and that's the same in anything, in any sport really, or any really walk of life. You can always have a different opinion to the people who are in charge. That's what makes life great. But some of the stuff was a little bit not unsavory. It was just very predictable. It's just kind of like, come on, guys, move along.
It's predictable and not even really paying.
It's been 3 years. It's been 3 years. Like this, it's not happening. In terms of the rest of it, big shout out to whoever was running the world feed and missed one of the Matildas goals.
Yes, mate. Yep. Oh, yeah. Big
late W League on Fox energies.
Yes.
I've seen that happen a couple of times in games where they've taken the world feed. When I was working at Fox, it happened I think it happened in a game against Bangladesh, or an away Socceroos game that was definitely shot in 4:3 ratio, not 16:9. But yeah, it's, these things happen. But I did have a chuckle. I did laugh at Tara being like, "Yeah, sorry about that. That's not our doing."
Yes.
But yeah, other than that, good performance. We go again.
Yep.
Thailand's going to be super interesting.
I'm just going to gripe about my one other, and I hate it in every sports commentary, is the harping back to the blasting coach halftime speech. I think there was a comment made in the second half that the players have got 10 minutes to, or whatever it was, to show that they deserve to be out there. And everything that we've seen from Tony, I can absolutely, no way would I think that would be the type of message he would have given. And you could see it with the same players coming out in the second half. They came out and they were calm, and they had been given faith by their coach. I think if Tony was yelling, then things would be going really far south. I don't think he's that kind of coach. And I think we just need to put some of that outdated sort of raging coach commentary to bed sometimes.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I'll add, I mean, there's two things here. Obviously, as a commentator myself, I try and avoid criticizing them. But I think more importantly, once Courtney Vine came on, I don't think I actually heard anything for the rest of the game. Yeah. So I had many tweets. Just the sound of screaming microphone feedback.
The Twitter feed got much happier as well.
Yeah. Oh, there's another missed shot by Australia. Oh, Courtney Vine's coming on. Everybody celebrate.
Yes, everyone. And then I got through most of my drafts, and the Beyond Eye coverage went completely south. But that's
very good. I did enjoy messaging you and saying, what's happening tonight? Just finishing my Courtney Vine drafts.
Yes. And my US college references.
Yeah, my God, need to get my US college. Although I must say, speaking of the Philippines, and we do mention the whole diaspora thing. Huge fan of their centre forward just squaring up to Alana Kennedy.
Yes.
I'm like, oh God, this is only going to go one way.
Also a fan of the old school headband.
As well. She had the Jerry curl.
Yeah.
And it was a look. It was so good. I love that.
And then Serena Bolton, of course. Legend for scoring the winner against Jordan in the 2018 World Cup, and that's I love that so much. Just the silence of the Jordanian home crowd.
Yeah, I mean, both fans were shook. She plays in Japan now too. She's just recently signed for one of the teams in the WE League, which is really cool.
Yeah. Okay, so I suppose on to the dub, if we can remember. Now, I might need some help here. Fortunately, bloody COVID and postponements again, but we did get 3 games away. So on Friday night before Australia, Indonesia, Adelaide 1, Wellington Phoenix 0. Man, Wellington, they just can't get it done. They look good again, but not then Adelaide just came over the top of them.
Yeah, I didn't see this one, sorry. But I was hearing from people that, Wellington, they looked really solid and capable, and beware in a few seasons' time.
Oh, yes.
Wellington strong, Adelaide early days energies.
Yes.
So close, but so close doesn't get you games.
Yeah. I just think, among other things, just when they get the fitness base to actually go through 90 minutes, then I think the rest of us might be in trouble.
Yeah,
not sure who it
game
was on
a
Twitter.
good example of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not sure who it was on Twitter, but they said, "Don't feel sorry for Wellington. You'll hate them in 3 years when they're bullying your team." It sounds about right. Then, speaking of bullying, unfortunately, on to Saturday and Jubilee Stadium, Sydney FC 3, Melbourne City 0, and that was top of it was first versus second, but not really close in the end.
City looked hopeless. They just looked completely void of ideas, and also like Sydney just looked so fluid, even missing, Seamson and Vine. They just looked like that goal, that Rachel Lowe goal where she gave Bubs the eyes. Yes, champagne football. We love to see it. Sydney go 4 points clear at the moment.
7 points clear.
7 points clear. So,
I can't see anyone beating them. I can't see anyone getting a goal off them even.
Yeah.
Well, there's 7 games now without conceding. And at this point, it's like Sydney first, Daylight probably second, third, and fourth at this stage.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a lot for Melbourne City to think about. They're not that hard hit by representative duties. Obviously, they've had the COVID issue previously, but look, they were pretty abhorrent, to be honest.
Yeah, because they're not hard hit, because they even had Winona Heatley back after the Dubai training camp. So it's really just Holly McNamara and it was clearly more your right, Dale, than just the absence of Holly McNamara. Yeah. But also, 2 lovely goals from
just looking at the stats as well. Like City had 60% of the ball. Oof. Like, what are you doing? Like it's just such a, and I hate singling out coaches, but like this is just Rado with no strikers. And I know that Hannah Wilkinson's been chucking them in for fun, but like if you can't get the ball up to her, she can't score.
Yep.
Just passing it around does not win games. Like you've got to actually be a little bit more penetrative. Also, Jada Wyman just didn't have a lot to do in this, but what she did well. So.
Yep. And kind of linking back to something similar to what we said earlier, they actually chucked up Emma Checker for the late stages of the game. She was up front. That confused me for a bit, but I think, it goes back to what you said, just kind of out of ideas, City. But, 2 lovely goals from Rachel Lowe. 2 assists from Ali Green, one with either foot, which was nice. And Paige Satchell getting her first goal for Sydney, which was lovely, and a lovely assist from Sabini, which definitely was not a poor first touch.
Yeah, she definitely meant to pass that ball. I don't know where she meant to pass that ball though.
Oh, by the way, just how silly me forget. Congratulations to Paige Hayward on scoring her first A-League women's goal. That was the only goal in Adelaide's 1-0 win over Wellington. Now on to the game I went to up in the land of palm trees and giant sauce bottles. At Sepco Stadium, Perth Glory 1, Western Sydney Wanderers 0, and this is another team that struggles to find the back of the net, to say the least.
Again, we've had this...
Sorry, did either of you see it?
I did, but I can't remember a thing about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I watched it in parts, but...
quite telling, actually, Madge. That's
better, I was going to say, better analysis for the best.
I remember disagreeing with poor Sarah Langman at the end, and she's just typical goalkeeper. We need to score. They're doing their job on the defensive side, Western Sydney. It's got to get that final third working for them.
Yeah, they have a 38-year-old 38-year-old right winger and an 18-year-old centre forward. So kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place in the fact that they're just missing players who are kind of really in their prime at this stage. And there's no disrespect to either of those players, but Briley Henry's going to be very good one day. That day was not on the weekend. Also, they just like the point of Wanderers. I get what they're trying to do. I don't know how they're trying to achieve it because, like, obviously they see Henry as their big, not even target player, but they're kind of playing a halfway between like a target player and like come and get the ball and like we need you to be charging through to the keeper, but also at the edge of there's not a lot of like cohesion of ideas in terms of where they're going with their attack. Like it's almost I wouldn't be averse to putting like Rosie Galea up front, like just so that she's got somebody to go with her. Because I can't. They've only scored like what 2 or 3 goals this season.
2 goals in 7 games.
I just don't like
Brisbane, which was a penalty as well. So
it was a penalty, high XG. Another Brisbane thing. But yeah, as I said, I mean, like they've got decent players on the bench. They've got players who can score. Like you've got Collister, Gallagher. Obviously, you've got to rotate a little bit at this time of year because you've got kind of games. Nobody really knows what's happening with the league at this point. But it's kind of much ado about nothing at Rudy Hill at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah. And also, they are tracking to miss the finals by miles with the league's second best defense.
Yeah, which is completely bizarre because, as you know, we always say that like you can win. You know, defense wins championships, but like it doesn't win championships when you don't score goals.
Yes. But shout out to you, Claire Hunt. You're doing very well.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Deborah Andela Harp for an absolute peach of a freak. She had that goal. She had that free kick last week saved by Coelho, who was like that again. Where's this? Where's this for the young and junior Matildas? Why do we not have more of these free kicks?
Yeah, it's just Hannah Lowry maybe. Debbie's a little bit too old now, but she was with the young Matildas. Don't think she took the set pieces though. But
no, I think Hannah and Rachel Lowe did.
Yeah.
Again, kind of blessed for choice there.
But and by the way, we should pay credit to Perth, as we all know. It's just been another ridiculously difficult season for Alex Aparkas. But
I mean, he's got COVID at the moment, so.
No, he was on the bench. He's recovered. He
had COVID recently then. Yeah, so like.
It's a bit surprising, but good on him. He's recovered quickly.
At least he could like go home to see his mum and just be like, "Mum, please some soup."
Yes,
a blanket.
Maybe is that the secret to Perth? Is that the secret for Perth that half of their squad's from Sydney, so they're actually all at home now?
Yeah, well, they've just got they've ditched their dietitian. They've just got Alex's mum making them like making them spanakopita and moussaka on the reg.
I was thinking like they could be benefiting from like just being in the camp environment, but they're often
they signed Lena Karmas recently as well. So,
but yeah, there's some positives there, but to allay the disappointment. So I mean, they'll probably just get better and better as the season goes on. So
yeah. And the point is, in that article I shamefully haven't published yet, where Neil's 5 things we learned from Perth versus the Wanderers, he did note that it's spoken about the high press. Defense starts from the forwards, and that was really worked really well against the Wanderers, just basically giving them no options and forcing turnovers. And it's the hallmark of his Sydney Uni teams. And
he's always played. You're exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly right. He loves that. He plays with 11 defenders basically.
Yes, he does. He told me a stat relating to the 2019 season where they ended up as double winners in NPL, where he said our forwards made more tackles than our defenders. Sounds about right. Yeah.
Interesting next week. I'm not sure if we'll come onto this. A distance derby in a neutral venue.
And I would love it if they told us where the venue was.
Yeah, look, there's plenty of time between now and then. There's at least 3 days.
Yes. Okay.
The A-Leagues will get a media release to us soon.
Please.
Is it going to be on Friday? Is the old Newcastle Jets media manager running the A-Leagues media? We're announcing where the game is at kickoff. You have to find it. Like geocaching with football.
Yeah. Oh dear. But yeah, I suppose I might as well throw to next week. So unfortunately, as we all know, COVID cases in Melbourne Victory's camp means the game scheduled for tonight between Melbourne Victory and Sydney FC has been postponed, but we still have 4 games to look forward to. I love a Friday night at Marconi Stadium, Western Sydney Wanderers versus Adelaide United. Oh, I've got some thoughts. Do I wear my Matilda McNamara Adelaide jersey into the Wanderers media box? Should I?
Yeah, why not?
Yes.
It's not the first time that you've worn a club jersey of the opposing team.
Oh,
in the media
yes.
box.
That's a story for another day.
So isn't it the time it should be done?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Especially considering like where it is. Also, you know, it's a fairly. Oh, they're going to be wearing that delightful coral jersey too.
Coral against.
These are the things I think about.
Yeah,
This
that's
is what
right,
come
they
into
will
my mind palace.
Yes. Coral, that they will be wearing that. Okay, Saturday is Brisbane Roar versus Melbourne City at Moreton Daily Stadium. I wish I was prepared, but
yeah, that's it. Morton Daily.
Moreton Daily Stadium.
Hopefully it'll go ahead.
Yeah, 5 p.m. kickoff or 4 p.m. local time. And the aforementioned distance derby between Perth and Wellington. Keep an eye on socials because we don't know where it is yet.
Yeah, could be anywhere.
Sunday, Newcastle Jets versus Canberra United at McDonald Jones Stadium. That, I believe, is a 4 p.m. kickoff. So just briefly, I think I'll go through the FAWSL results. Just because, I mean, the highlights were there. Manchester United 3, Tottenham Hotspur 0. Another goal for Leah Galton to keep our friend of Beyond 90, Lockie France, happy. Great result for Brighton and Hove Albion, holding Chelsea to a 0-0 draw. Aston Villa grabbed a stoppage time winner from Alicia Lehman to beat Leicester City 2-1, kind of a local derby there. And more tough luck for Birmingham City. They were leading 2-0, but then Reading came back 1-3-2. There was a goal from former victory favourite Natasha Dowie, and also a goal from the world's tallest woman, Justine Van Havermaet. Then, sorry about this, Dale. West Ham 3, Everton 0. Let's move on. And
We're very bad.
Yes.
This just in.
Yep. And then the final result: Manchester City 1, Arsenal 1. So a bit of controversy with the ball hitting the ref in the build-up to Manchester City's goal, which every Arsenal fan was very upset about. That Bunny Shaw scored that one, but then a stoppage time equaliser from Tobin Heath, which I think is her first goal for Arsenal. So the points were shared at the Academy ground, was it, where they played?
Yeah, if they played it at home, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it. I think it's probably a good time to go into the Queens of the Week. So Dale, had you thought of anyone for this?
I do have a Queen of the Week. My Queen of the Week, I actually have two. I have a non-gender specific member of royalty of the week, who is whoever it is at the AFC who managed to get Australia's goals, all 18 of them, into a 3-minute highlights package for YouTube. My other Queen of the Week was from the, now not non-existent Iran-India game, was Zoreh Khudai, who's the Iranian goalkeeper who pulled off one of the best saves that you will ever see to maintain or to get a point. Not that it really ended up mattering, but just made I think India had a header back across goal, moved to a right, kind of not flapped at it, but pushed it away. Body going in the wrong direction. Just fantastic. One of those things where that's the kind of thing that you practice to do maybe once a year or once every 5 years, and to pull it off in Iran's first Asian Cup game. More credit to her. And it'll be interesting to see how they go in there, or winner takes all game against Chinese Taipei.
Okay, Madge, who is your Queen of the Week?
I think I'm going to keep my cranky mode on.
Oh, joker!
Bit of a joker, but it's around about a queen. Erin Cuthbert.
This one, yes.
Absolutely calling out a ridiculous headline, which I've just, you know what? We don't even need to say the headline. Just a ridiculous headline. I think it was from the Sun, following one of their, I think it was the WSL game. Just ridiculously covering women's sport in the most disingenuous and sexist way you could think. And every time you think the UK papers can't get worse, they'll pull a headline like they did out. And well done, Erin, for just not putting up not putting up with it and just calling it out. Really.
By the sun.
Yep. Yes. I was going to say exactly the same thing. Now, so let's do Cheryl's. It's hard to go past Samco after she became Australia's all-time leading scorer, but as a long-time Ivy Lewis supporter, Cheryl also definitely has to give her a shout-out for scoring her first Matildas goal. And on to me, like Courtney Vine would be too easy. I've tweeted about her way too much in the past week. But my first Queen of the Week is Atletico Madrid's Virginia Torrecilla, who played her first game in nearly 2 years after recovering from a brain tumor and chemotherapy. There were wonderful scenes in the Supercopa final in Spain where she entered the field late on, massive round of applause. And in fact, celebrated afterwards with the Barcelona players. They were all got around her and like congratulated her on return. They did that celebration where they threw her up in the air. So wonderful scenes. I believe it was ESPN FC who covered that well. And my second Queen of the Week is a player Cheryl and I are fighting over, but she's not here, so I can claim her all for myself. So the Republic of Ireland's own Aoife Colville set up the first goal in Glasgow City's 4-0 win over Spartans in the Scottish Women's Premier League. So Irish internationals helping City beat Spartans. How good. So I think... And
Jesus, that's tailor-made.
To Dale, who is literally the only person that gets all of that reference, because I don't think any of our listeners will understand.
Very good.
That. But anyway,
sorry, there's a magpie on my bird trying to eat some meat. I'm just very confused by what's going on in my life.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it. I suppose that's all. Thank you so much, Magella and Dale, for joining us once again. Thanks to the internet gods for once not letting my internet for a whole podcast without making me look like I'm living in the 1980s. And more than anything else, thanks to all of you for listening, or even if you're the small audience that or watches us on Facebook Live, we really appreciate it. Take care, and we will see you soon.